Today's topic is your guide to choosing the proper emergency equipment. But before we get started, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping things real quick. First, questions. We encourage questions, we welcome questions, and you're allowed to post questions at any time during the presentation using the questions section on your control panel. Ask questions that cannot any questions that cannot be addressed quickly or during the Q&A, we will answer afterwards via email. A little bit more housekeeping. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please visit the website that's listed there. They can help you out with any audio, video issues you may be having. As a note, though, the webinar will be recorded and available on demand. This will be sent to you in a follow-up email within 24 hours of the presentation here, so you and your teams can view it at your discretion. Poll questions will be launched throughout the presentation. I'll get Samantha some time to ask those questions during the presentation, and once again, your participation today is really appreciated. I'm your host, Dennis O'Neill. I'm a Safety Education Specialist with HAWS, also the Training Coordinator. Been with HAWS about 5 years, and assisting us today is Samantha Hoke, our Marketing Specialist, also about 5 years with HAWS, so a little bit of experience for you today. Our agenda. Today's agenda, we really want to talk about a few things: the importance of providing the proper first aid, the types of emergency response products, on-site ANSI compliance and inspections, and then we'll finish it up with a little bit of live Q&A at the end as well. That being said, here is our first poll question. Over to you, Samantha.
Thanks, Dennis. If you don't mind taking a moment, we'd like to know how you found out about our webinar today. If you could check all that apply, that would be great. Did you receive an email invitation from HAWS? Did you hear about it in our monthly e-newsletter? Did you go onto either of our HAWS or HAWS Integrated websites, or find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter? Did you hear from a friend, a colleague, or through an industry publication? I'm going to give just a moment for everybody to answer. Perfect, thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Samantha. Okay, so getting into the meat of today's topic, the importance of providing proper equipment. What we're talking about here at this point is prevention. Now, not prevention of the accident. In the situation where our equipment is being used, our safety equipment, the accident's already taken place. We're talking about prevention of further injury or possibly even fatality, overall general workplace risk, and lost time, money, both for the employer and the employee. In addition, OSHA has stepped up enforcement, particularly for employers who have a history of serious or repeated violations, also known as willful violations. Really, let's face it, the goal here is to go home safe every day, not just for us, but all of our employees and our loved ones. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration, also known as OSHA, requires that where the eyes or body of any person may be exposed to injurious corrosive materials, suitable facilities for quick drenching or flushing of the eyes and body shall be provided within the work area for immediate emergency use. So while it kind of lays out the rules there, it's a little bit vague. There's some gray areas. What does suitable mean? What does quick drenching or flushing mean? Some states require emergency eye wash and shower equipment in workplaces where irritants or chemicals are toxic by absorption. So what we really need to think about here is, what is the purpose? What is the intent of what OSHA is trying to get here? Well, the intent is to protect our employees and our companies. The American National Standards Institute, also known as ANSI, developed the Z358.1 standard, and this defines emergency eye wash and shower design, location, and temperature requirements for proper functionality and usage. OSHA enforces and refers to the ANSI standard during site inspections and violation reporting. So ANSI is the arm that writes the standard. OSHA is the arm that comes in and enforces the standard. The Canadian Centre for Occupational Safety and Health, also known as the CCOHS. The CCOHS references and recommends the ANSI standard also. Each province has its unique regulations, similar to here in the States, where each state may have unique regulations on the local or state level. The Canadian Standards Association, which is the CSA, also references OSHA, which again enforces the ANSI standard. Another thing that we want to point out is that OSHA fines have increased. On November 2nd of 2015, it was signed into law that OSHA fines are increasing for the first time since 1990, and they're going to increase by 80%. This actually already went into effect on August 1st of this year. An example of that is a penalty for a willful violation would rise to $127,000, up from the current $70,000, which is quite a significant fine for a willful violation. So what the important thing to do here, and the first step really is, we need to consider the potential risks. So the first thing you need to do is review your operation from the perspective of the materials that your employees handle, the volatility of said materials, and the likelihood of a spill or splash accidents that may injure employees or others around. So in order to properly identify the equipment we need to ask a few questions. The questions are these: do the safety data sheets of materials used in your facility call for immediately flushing or drenching upon exposure to the skin or eyes? Is the hazard likely to affect the eyes, face, body, or even all three? Is there plumbing near the potential hazard? This will define whether you'll need a plumbed or a self-contained unit. How many employees could be exposed to these hazards at the same time? So we need to think about mass accident, a large drum explodes or spills or tips over. How many could be exposed potentially? That's an important note. And then how quickly can employees reach the unit, the station where they're to receive their first aid? Will the unit be outdoors and exposed to freezing or extremely hot temperatures? Extreme climate conditions require specific equipment. What is the inlet temperature? Meaning, what is the inlet temperature of the water? Is it a corrosive environment? Not the materials themselves, but the environment itself that we're talking about. There are some environments that are highly corrosive and require, once again, specialized equipment for those environments. And do we need any added protection? Example, that would be a Class 1 Div 1 or Class 1 Div 2.
And so one thing to keep in mind is to ask yourself these questions when thinking about the facility that you work in or the facilities that you're working with. Later on this presentation, we're actually going to go through a scenario and re-answer all these questions and then come up with a solution.
Perfect.
Sorry, so we are actually headed into poll question 2. I'm about to launch that. If you guys don't mind taking a second to answer. We'd like to know what best describes your role in choosing showers and eye face washes. Do you decide or make recommendations? Do you install or maintain the product? Do you place the order, specify the product in plans, or do you not have a role? Great, thanks for participating. Back to you, Dennis.
Excellent, thank you, Samantha. So the next thing we need to talk about are the types of emergency response products. Obviously, there are different applications for different equipment. So let's talk about where the applications are appropriate for different types of equipment. So the first piece of equipment we want to talk about is the common eye wash. Now these are for environments that have airborne particulates, shavings, eye hazards. Common applications would be wood shop, paint shop, welding shop, construction. What we're really talking about here is solid particulate matter, something that may get into the eye and cause an irritant, where an eye wash would help to relieve that situation. We really don't want to consider chemicals in this, for this asset, for this class of assets, which is the eye wash. Chemicals are likely to not just get in your eye. They're very likely to splash over the entire face, where an eye face wash would be more appropriate, and that's the next piece of equipment here, the eye face wash. These are for minor incidents dealing with chemicals or pathogens, such as airborne particulates, corrosive materials with a lower than 2 pH, which is very acidic, or a higher than 11 pH, which is very basic, and obviously any bloodborne pathogens. Common applications for this would be schools, hospitals, medical research facilities, laboratories, manufacturing facilities, but really not just limited to those. It's for any situation where there is a corrosive chemical that could cause harm to an employee where they're interacting with it and a spill could occur. Once again, this is the eye and face wash. Make sure you have coverage for the entire face and your eyes. A drench shower. This is a total body decontamination where a chemical acid exposure to the entire body is present, but eye-face rinse is not required. To be perfectly honest, this is kind of a rare bird in what we do. Where there's a situation where your entire body could be exposed, but the eye-face not, is very rare. And the common applications listed here, you see loading docks, warehouses, hospital decon units. The last one there, the hospital decontamination unit, is really where we would see this most commonly. Think of a scenario where a worker has a hazmat suit on, even the helmet, the entire works. They may need to decontaminate their suit once they've removed their helmet to further get into, to get access beyond into the hospital or any other areas they need. They might need to decontaminate their suit before leaving the area. So that's really where you're going to see this. Once again, not a very common application. In any situation where there could be a complete body coverage during a spill, we always want to assume that the eye face is also involved in that spill, which is where we come to the combination unit, really the workhorse, the most common piece of equipment that most any manufacturer will sell. These are for total eye, face, and body decontamination with highly corrosive chemical or acid exposure to the eyes, face, and body being present. Some common applications, again, chemical plants, refineries, manufacturing facilities, warehouses, but really, once again, anywhere there is a chance that there could be a hazardous spill for our employees, we want to make sure we have full coverage, full body coverage, including the eyes and face. Tempered water systems. These are for environments where the incoming water is not within the ANSI approved tepid water range, which was set at a minimum of 60 and a maximum of 100 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 16 to 38 Celsius. These are to be provided to the eye wash and or shower. Common applications, really any industry. Extreme climate conditions are most common. Situations where there is limited water access, or an enclosed temperature control needed. Basically, it's too cold outside, even with tempered water, to expect someone to get into a shower for 15 minutes. As you can see on the bottom picture there, there's some snow on the ground there. We can't expect someone to stand outdoors exposed for 15 minutes, even with tempered water. An enclosure, a heated enclosure, is really ideal for that. Portable eye washes, these are great units. Gravity-fed or air-charged eye washes, ideal for locations without access to plumbed water. Sterile bacteriostatic additive needed to preserve the water, and Haas does have that available. Common applications, once again, wood shops, paint shops, welding shops, construction. It's important to remember portable eye washes generally are just that, an eye wash. It's generally not going to be an eye face wash. It's going to be an eye wash.
And to keep in mind with the portable eye washes, they do require a different type of maintenance versus any plumbed units. So the ANSI standard says that you need to visually inspect these portable units at least once a week to ensure that the water is full and that there, of course, is water. The sterile bacteriostatic additives that you can get from manufacturers typically last about 3 months. So it does require you to empty these units, refill them with potable water and the sterile additive, and pressurize if you do have one of the air pressurized units.
Perfect. Thank you, Samantha. All right, personal eye wash, also commonly referred to as the squeeze bottle. These are ANSI compliant as supplemental equipment, and let me explain exactly what that means here, because there is a little bit of confusion in the market about these personal use bottles. It's a supplementary device that supports a plumbed or portable unit by delivering immediate flushing fluid to the eyes. Now, once again, it does not meet the ANSI Z58.1 standard for the full 50-minute required flushing period, nor is it hands-free, so it doesn't meet the standard for either of those. What it is intended to do is to provide immediate flushing fluid to the victim while they're en route to a primary station. In other words, they can have this bottle right next to their workstation hanging on the wall. An incident occurs, they grab that bottle, give themselves the immediate relief and that they need, but they're working their way towards a primary eye wash station at that point. Once again, common applications, indoor work sites, wood shops, and the most important I consider is those areas immediately adjacent to the hazard to provide first aid, once again, to someone en route to the primary equipment.
So some of the key words to keep in mind when you're working with personal eye washes or squeeze bottles is primary versus supplemental. So if you go into the appendix within ANSI, there are multiple products that are considered supplemental, one being a drench hose and the other being personal eye washes. And then primary, what primary means is that it can provide a full 15 minutes of flushing fluid, and it does meet all the requirements of either an eye wash, eye face wash, combination shower, or tempered water system, which were the 4 that we just had gone through. One really neat aspect is not many manufacturers, but Haws does provide 2 different liquid solutions. One is your basic saline, which you'll see other manufacturers providing, but another really key offering is our pH neutralizer. So if you're working with any corrosive chemical that is either below a pH of 4 or above a pH of 10, you can utilize this squeeze bottle immediately to bring back the pH of your eye to the normal 7. And then again, either get to your primary station or get to the hospital.
Perfect. Good point. Thank you for adding that. And as Samantha just mentioned, there is another type of supplementary piece of equipment, the drench hose. It can be ANSI compliant. It's a supplementary device that supports plumbed or portable or primary unit by providing fluid to irrigate and flush body and face areas. Now, a drench hose may be considered an eye wash or an eye face wash if it meets the performance requirements of Section 5 and or Section 6 of the ANSI Z58.1 standard. And what this means is it has to meet all the criteria of an eye wash to be considered such. So it has to have the proper mounting height, it needs to be hands-free, it must deliver the volume of flushing fluid required, a few other requirements, 6 inches off the wall. So as long as the piece of equipment, the drench hose, can meet all the requirements, then yes, it can be considered an eye wash or an eye face wash. Flow rate differences. Let's talk a little bit about that. I just mentioned that on the drench hose. ANSI minimum flow rates. ANSI generally sets minimum standards. These are minimum performance requirements. Rarely do they talk about maximum allowables. They do so in temperature because of the health issue with the tissue of the eye. Once the temperature is above 100, it can be injurious to the eye. So once again, they generally just set minimum standards. So for an eye wash only, the minimum flow rate is 0.4 gallons per minute. For an eye face wash, the minimum flow rate is 3 gallons a minute. And for a drench shower, it's up to 20 gallons a minute. For a combination unit, there must be a minimum sufficient flow and volume to both shower and eye face wash for simultaneous use. So what this is saying is, when I turn on my shower, there can be no starvation of the eye face wash. Even though the shower's pulling 20 GPM, we can't allow the eye face wash to drop below 3 GPM during that situation. So we see that a lot in the field. It's pretty common, actually. Internally we call it starvation. We see a lot of starvation from the eye face wash when drench showers are activated. Luckily, Haws equipment has solved that with our internal flow controls. Installation requirements. Now, ANSI it's a very long document. It's well over 30 pages, but we've kind of distilled it down into a few really basic key points that we really need to make sure are observed, because it's the safety of our fellow workers we're talking about. So the first and foremost, it must be accessible within 10 seconds. What that means is wherever the employee is working with the hazard, the station must be located within 10 seconds of normal walking distance. Once again, it's a little bit vague. ANSI does make reference to 55 feet in the standard. We prefer to stay away from feet. Let's just talk about the 10 seconds of travel. It must also be located on the same level as the hazard. As you can see from our scenario here, let's say the big yellow booth on bottom didn't exist, and there was a station there and the employee's working, he has the spill. He can't be expected to climb up to that second mezzanine there to reach the other station. It must be located on the same level as the hazard. It must be free of obstruction. This is important as well. We have to be able to access the equipment. Once again, if we take a look at the picture here, you can see the bottom booth there. I'm not sure anyone could get into those double swinging doors, just the way that other piece of equipment is set up right up against it. So it's great that they have it there. It's not great that it's not free of obstruction. And also must be identified with highly visible signage and in a well-lit location. Very important. Obviously, when we're bringing on new hires or doing safety training, it's important that not only do they know where the equipment is located, but they know how to use it. So we train in people how to use the pull cord and the push flags. Everyone needs to know where the equipment is and how to use it.
Dennis, I just wanted to bring up a quick question. We've had multiple people when you just went over the free of obstruction portion asking if a door is considered an obstruction. So could you reference that?
Absolutely. A door can be considered an obstruction. It can also be considered not an obstruction. What we're looking at here is the two major points are path of travel. Does the door swing in the direction of the path of travel from the victim to the station? So if I'm walking through the door must be able to swing away from me. If I have to pull the door towards my body, that is considered an obstruction. Locking. The door must not have the ability even to ever be locked. That's not saying the door must remain unlocked. The door must not even have the ability to be locked. So as long as those two criteria are met, then a door is not considered an obstruction. If it swings if I have to pull the door towards me, or if there's a scenario where it could be locked, then that door would be considered an obstruction and would not be compliant. For a little bit more information on installation and other requirements, you can visit the ANSI Z58.1 resources page at hosco.com.
If you also wanted to watch another webinar, we have a 1-hour webinar recorded on demand on the HAWS YouTube page that gets very detailed into the requirements of ANSI Z358.1.
Perfect. Okay, mounting options. There are several different pieces of equipment that most manufacturers offer for a variety of situations. So obviously we want to make sure we have a piece of equipment that suits any need that our clients may have. So we offer portable units such as our 7501, faucet mounted units, we have barrier-free lab units, deck or sink mounted face washes, eye face washes, wall mounted models, pedestal models, or complete self-contained units. Some other options that we need to talk about with equipment. Once again, there are different scenarios out there in the world. We as a manufacturer need to make sure we're prepared for any scenario our clients bring us. So we offer freeze protection for our equipment. Obviously ADA compliance is huge and important. ABS plastic. We have plastic options or stainless steel option, which is great for corrosive environments. It's highly corrosive resistant. We offer galvanized steel. Alarms. Alarms are very important, especially in large facilities where people may be acres away from help or even another coworker. When the equipment is activated, it's important that the alarm is either a local alarm or it goes back to a central control system where additional help can come to the victim. And then, of course, tempering options. Many options for this. Some examples, we have tankless options, steam, thermostatic mixing valves, and we have some more information in our separate tempered water webinar found at hosco.com, as Samantha mentioned. And we have another poll question, Samantha.
Thanks, Dennis. We'd like to know what type of equipment, emergency equipment, that you currently have, whether it's your facility or facilities that you're working with. Any of the personal eye washes or squeeze bottles, portable eye washes, whether gravity fed or air pressurized. Do you have any plumbed units? Or do you have, as you had seen in some various pictures, yellow or any other colored enclosed tempered water booths? Or do you not have any equipment at all at this time? All right, thanks everybody for participating. Back to you, Dennis.
Okay, so we talked a little bit earlier about some of the questions we need to ask ourselves when we're looking at the proper selection of equipment. And so let's kind of go through the questions that we raised earlier, and let's answer them and make a little fake scenario here. So, do the safety data sheets of materials used in your facility call for immediately flushing or drenching upon exposure to the skin or eyes? Let's say in this scenario it is yes. Is the hazard likely to affect the eyes, face, body, or all three? We're going to say all three. Is there plumbing near the potential hazard? We'll say yes to that one as well. How many employees could be exposed to these hazards at the same time? Once again, this is an important question. When we generally think of an accident happening, it's usually on the smaller scale. A small splash that got into someone's face, a small spill that got into their skin. We need to also consider worst case scenarios. A large vat of a highly corrosive chemical, cracking, leaking, blowing up, whatever it may be. So let's say in this situation we have a very large tank and we're going to say 50 employees could be exposed at one time. How quickly can employees reach the unit? 10-second rule, access on the same level. We're going to say that that's what we need as well, which of course would comply with the standard. Will the unit be outdoors and exposed to freezing or extremely hot temperatures? We'll say no, this is indoor in an indoor warehouse facility. Inlet temperature of the water is 55 degrees, which is pretty common. That's your ground temp water coming up in most scenarios, maybe even much colder than that this time of year. Is it a corrosive environment, the environment itself? Well, no, it's just going to be a basic warehouse type environment. And do we need any added protection like Class 1 Div 1, Class 1 Div 2? For this one, we'll also say no. So when we look at all the scenarios here, all the situations, what we would recommend as HAWS is multiple, in this case up to 50, 8300, 8309 combination shower and eye face wash units with a tempering system. Now, the tempering system could be simple circulation loop, it could be something much more complex, and HAWS Integrated, our division of HAWS here, can help you with any scenarios like that. Best practices. The best practice for flushing the eye is to flush away materials from the vulnerable nasal cavity and ducts. Most medical students, when they are introduced to flushing the eyes and proper education on this, are taught to flush from the inside of the eye out. You want to flush away any contaminants from your lacrimal punctum, which is also your tear glands, your lacrimal sac, all the things there that are, believe it or not, very connected. When a chemical gets into the eye, there's even a chance it could work its way down into your nasal cavity, could then be breathed, causing further issues. So we just want to make sure that we're sweeping all contaminants away from those sensitive cavities and ducts, which we've actually accomplished, with our Axion MSR technology. The MSR stands for Medically Superior Response. The MSR, really, what this piece of technology does is it provides an inverted water stream to gently flush contaminants away from the glands surrounding the eye. As you can see from the picture there, the water is introduced at the inner corner of the eye next to the victim's nose and then pushed away in an outward flowing motion to sweep those contaminants away from the nose. This really does a couple of things. It properly removes contaminants as suggested by the medical community. It also provides great victim comfort because of our laminar flow water streams. There's no disruption between the water layers. So it's constant, soft pressure and predictable stream height, which is very important. User comfort is often overlooked, where the eyes are very sensitive, not just to chemicals, but also to pressure. And so to gently be able to provide a way for someone to sweep those contaminants away from the eye is very important, and will encourage that they stay in the eye wash for the full 15-minute flush cycle.
One question that comes up very often, someone will look at this Axion head and see it's a single head, because typically in the industry you're seeing dual heads, and that's doing exactly the opposite of what Dennis just explained. What it's potentially doing is pushing those contaminants in the eyes from the outside of the eye into the inside of the eye, potentially into your system via the tear ducts.
Perfect, correct. Yeah, the single head, it does a couple things for us. It allows us to have the eye face wash all of the same consistent flow, but it also allows us to control the flow. And so many times with the dual head, one of the problems with a dual head design is uneven or unequal flow. One side might be very aggressive, the other side maybe almost nothing coming out. It's actually very, very common. I'm sure some of you have seen that in your own facilities as you're doing your tests. The single head design lets us get around that problem. We're allowed to have smooth, equal distribution of water to the face and the eyes, regardless of incoming water pressure, as long as it's no greater than 90 and no less than 30 psi. Our flow controls can handle any of those scenarios. So further best practices. There is a 43% increased reduction of contaminants when using inverted flow. It's really the way to flush the eye. In fact, flushing inside to out is preferred 4-to-1, and that was based on an independent study of practicing ophthalmologists. There's always the one guy you can't convince, right?
That's right. We had a quick question wondering if the Axion single eye face wash head is available in combination units. I just wanted to hit on that really quick. Yes, it is available. Not to get a little too product focused, but Haws does have a retrofit kit for the majority of major other eye wash manufacturers to a simple twist on, twist off. You can twist off their dual head eye washes and twist on the Axion head. We provide you with all the major adapters, so then you'll be able to provide the proper flushing direction with flow control and eye and face coverage.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so another issue that we run into frequently is people we know want to do the right thing. We all want to protect our coworkers, our friends, families, anyone that we work with. The problem is that a lot of times safety professionals, safety managers, they wear many, many hats. Not only do they worry about their emergency drench equipment, but they need to worry about slip protection, fall protection, eye protection, gloves. There are many things that fall under their responsibility. So it's hard to be an expert on everything. Well, this is kind of where we can help you out, because Haws can offer a complimentary emergency shower and eye face wash survey. We really encourage you to let our professional representatives help you mitigate your risk and ensure your compliance. And so really what this includes is one full day of inspections. We'll give you a day to come out and evaluate your equipment. At the end, you can expect an inspection report, an executive summary chart, recommendations are if there are areas where you are lacking and you need to get compliant, and then we'll set up a debrief meeting and web conference with you just to go over the results and the findings. And you can go to hosco.com/survey, fill out the form, and we'll get in touch with you and see if your facility is one that would require a survey. One of the troubling things that we found doing these surveys, we've been doing them for a couple of years now on our new software. We're able to compile some numbers out of this. Now, the pie chart on the right is based on a pretty small sampling size. I believe we have done right around 1,000 different stations, different eye washes, eye face washes, combination units. And what we found out of the first 1,000 or so stations was pretty troubling. 78% were non-compliant, performance related. There was another 10% that were non-compliant other. So let me break that down real quick. The performance related, what Haas did was we looked at the situation where if there was an accident and someone needed emergency care, which is what a drenched shower and eye face wash station is, could they receive first aid from that piece of equipment? In other words, could they expect to turn it on and have tepid water at a velocity non-injurious to them, and they could use that as a piece of first aid equipment? Unfortunately, we found that almost 4 out of 5 don't have that ability. They're not compliant. They won't provide proper first aid. Another 10% were non-compliant for other reasons. Obviously, within the standard of ANSI, they even discuss smaller things like we mentioned before, proper signage, well lit. If an area doesn't have the proper signage, we would call it non-compliant, but we would call that a non-compliant other. So that's an example of what the other might be. And then 12%, or about 1 out of 10, is fully compliant. Pretty troubling when you think about someone going to use that piece of equipment. And Samantha, we have another poll question.
Yes. Thanks, Dennis. I am attempting to launch the question. There we go. So we'd like to know if you'd be interested in this complimentary one-day site survey for your facility's equipment. Simply answer yes or no. If you answer yes, we'll make sure to have somebody reach out to you, and we will get your local Haas representative in contact with you to get that scheduled. I absolutely advise you take advantage of it. I think Dennis had mentioned that a lot of the sites and facilities that we go out to, they do assume that whether they are paying some company to do the testing of their eye washes or they are doing themselves, that they assume because they are doing that, they are 100% compliant. We are not finding that to be true. So we are here to help you and to make sure that all your equipment can be and will be compliant. I'm going to give just a moment to allow everybody to answer this question. Perfect. Thanks, everybody. Back to you, Dennis.
All right, so it looks like we maybe have a couple of questions. Oh, that's right. Before we get into questions, we want to answer a few that we see commonly. So I'm sure maybe even a couple of you are typing these questions right now as we speak. Hopefully we can head it off with some of these frequently asked questions. So the first one that comes up, are privacy curtains required? No, they're actually not required in the standard. But what we also need to think about here is what's best for the victim. And the best practice really for the victim is to remove the contaminated clothing. In that situation, a privacy curtain really, it should be in place. In the modern workplace, men and women working alongside one another, just for decency and for privacy of the victim, a curtain should be in place. Once again, not required though. Do the eye washes come with a cover? Generally, yes. I can't speak for all manufacturers, but I know at Haas, any piece of equipment that leaves here will be ANSI compliant, which means it will have a dust cover because that is a requirement of the ANSI standard. Where can you learn more about the most current ANSI standard? That's simple. Just go to haasco.com. Upper top right, you will find a support tab. Click on that, and then you will find a wealth of videos, webinars, white papers, just anything you need to fully understand the ANSI standard is right there. What are color requirements for emergency safety equipment? Okay, a color requirements for emergency safety equipment, it's not within the body of the ANSI Z58.1 standard, but always trying to strive to do the right thing. We went into the standard further and found in section 535 there is a standard set forth for equipment within ANSI. Red symbolizes danger. Orange should represent a warning. Yellow, caution. And green is for safety instructions or first aid. So in keeping in accordance with the rest of the standard that ANSI put forth, all Haas equipment comes in a standard green. There's a little bit of yellow on some of the piping just to make it a little more highly visible, but we try to keep everything within the standard. So Haas basic equipment comes in standard green. All right, Samantha, any questions?
Yeah, we have a handful. So one of the questions is, what's required in the weekly ANSI test versus the annual test?
Okay, very similar. The weekly tests, what we're looking for are path of travel free of obstruction, well lit, signage is in place. You've activated the equipment for a brief run. It's commonly referred to as a bump test, where you will activate the equipment just for a few seconds. And the goal here is a couple things. One, to ensure that there is in fact fluid going to the head and the shower, or the eye face wash head and the shower. And two, another really important aspect of this is to clear any stagnant water that are in dead legs. That can begin bacterial growth, so flushing that equipment at least weekly is important to help prevent rusty water, standing water, brown water, or any bacterial growth. That's really all that's required on the weekly test. You just want to make sure that everything is functioning properly. It goes from on to off very simply. Valves are in place. Everything's well lit, well marked. The annual test is much more in depth. It's going to require measurements, flow rates. We want to make sure flow rates are there. Much more in depth. 15-minute full run is actually required by ANSI to ensure that you have tepid water for the full 15-minute duration of the test. So very much more, a lot more to do on the annual, but they both can be done fairly easily.
Great, thanks. Another one of the questions is, let's see. So someone is saying that they do have a drench hose installed within 10 seconds of the potential hazard. Can you reinstate what the conditions or requirements are in order for it to be considered an ANSI compliant drench hose?
Yeah, well, it probably already is an ANSI compliant drench hose. If we want to make sure it's an ANSI compliant eye wash or an eye face wash, there's a few things it needs to meet. So one, it has to be able to be completely hands-free. So a vacuum breaker valve of some sort where you can just activate the lever and then it remains on until you physically turn it off. It has to be 6 inches from the wall at a minimum for headspace clearance. The flushing fluid pattern must meet the points of the eye wash gauge at some point less than 8 inches from the surface of the head, and that pattern must be between 33 inches minimum and 53 inches maximum from the surface on which the user stands. So as long as it can meet all of these criteria and once again deliver the proper 0.3 GPM, as long as it meets all of those criteria, then yes, it can be considered an eye face wash. I would encourage you to go to hosco.com and download our ANSI check sheet. There's a little checklist there, and that fully lines out all the requirements of an ANSI compliant eye wash or eye face wash, so you'll know that your station is within the guidelines.
Perfect, thank you. Someone was wondering if they have, I'm sorry, I'm trying to pull up the question. If they have facilities within multiple different states, are they able to take advantage of the complimentary shower survey program in all those states?
Absolutely. We've actually done this with quite a few, several larger clients throughout the United States, working at different facilities. We have one group we're working with in particular. We've already done about 30 or so of their facilities. They have 120 total. So absolutely. The most important thing to do is to make sure that all the facilities are on the same page, so that when we contact them, if you say, hey, this is great, we want this for our facilities nationwide, that they at least expect our call and that they know what's coming. We can provide from a corporate level the 50,000-foot view of this. We have a corporate accounts gentleman who can definitely help us coordinate these facility searches, so, or I'm sorry, inspections. So yes, absolutely, we can work with multiple facilities, not a problem at all.
All right, someone from the audience wanted to know, what is the flow control for the Axion head?
Okay, once again, ANSI sets the minimums forth. So the minimum for an eye face wash is 3 GPM. The actual flow control inside an Axion head is, sorry, oh, the actual the flow rate of the Axion head is 3.7 GPM with the flow control that's in the head there. So it's a little bit more than is required, but once again, there's no maximum set forth by ANSI, only minimums.
All right, let's see. We have a handful of other questions. Thank you all for taking the time to put those in. I'm just trying to get them in order here. So someone was wondering if the single head Axion design is preferred.
Preferred by medical doctors for sure because of the inverted flow. The fact that it's a single head, that really, in my opinion, that's the preferred way to go because we're able to solve the issue of inadequate flow to both eyes. The bullhorn style is what it's called, where there's a dual head, each providing an independent stream. It's the design that was first developed back in the 50s. It stood this test of time for forever until somebody said, "Hey, let's reinvent this. Let's do it. Let's talk to some doctors. Let's do it right." So that's when Axion technology was developed. So to say, is it preferred? In our opinion, absolutely yes, because we're able to solve the issues of simultaneous flow and unequal distribution to the eyes, which many of our competitors struggle with. They just haven't been able to crack that nut yet.
All right, someone was wondering what your thoughts are of using the distance measurement, using 3 minutes for a run or a jog versus the 10-second rule.
I can surely understand that. Most victims, most people in a high stress situation they're trying to get to that station as quickly as they can. Unfortunately, we don't know the extent of their injuries when the incident happens. So we really we would want to hope that they're able to physically reach the station by themselves quickly and in order to receive that first aid quickly. But there are many situations where they're going to need help. There could be situations where they're completely blinded and they're going to have to find their way there with on their own, under duress, or with the help of others, kind of dragging them along, taking them along, so to speak. So I am not the person to say that we should disregard the 10-second rule. Obviously, it's there for a reason, and a 10-second walking space is the time that was established by ANSI. If you want to make it closer, absolutely. And in my opinion, there should be a station right next to any hazardous material.
So someone wanted to know if you do have the personal emergency eye wash squeeze bottles as your supplementary station, does that extend the limit of where you can have a primary station past the 10-second rule?
Great question, and one that comes up frequently, in fact, pretty much daily. No, it does not extend the distance. What it does is it just provides immediate relief for your employee. They're not going to be able to buy themselves an extra 20 seconds because they're using the flushing fluid. You still are going to be required, if an inspector comes, you're still going to be required to show that you have a primary station within 10 seconds of the hazard. So no, it won't be able to extend the distance, but what it does do is provide immediate relief for your employee.
Plus, as mentioned earlier, there's the option of the pH neutralizer. So majority, and I believe all plumbed equipment from any manufacturer, I don't believe they provide any pH neutralizer. So if you are working with that very acidic or basic substance, you can utilize the neutralizer prior to getting to that primary station. Someone wanted to know, are there options for portable showers, not just eye washes?
There may be. Haas has a few options for portables, for portable showers, but usually those are our Haas integrated division, which handles large project type work, specialized work. The problem we run into with a lot of the portable showers is the volumes of water required. When you're talking basically around 25 gallons a minute for 15 full minutes, that's quite a lot of water. We're talking almost 400 gallons of water here. So it's to have a quote unquote portable shower is difficult to do. They're very large, they're heavy, fully loaded, completely full of flushing fluid, extremely heavy, require forklifts to move them around. Now I have seen trailer mounted type air charged large portable showers. Obviously, I don't know too much about them. It's not a Haas product, but I do know that there are similar types of products out there. But at this point, Haas doesn't offer what I would consider to be a truly portable unit. The units that we do offer are very large, and they can be put temporarily in place for a few months. You need to move it because the project's moving a couple months later, sure, but it's not truly portable like one would think comes to mind when you say the word portable.
I do know in the industry there is somebody that does make a quote portable shower, but one thing to keep in mind is it's not ANSI compliant. As Dennis mentioned, you would need almost 25 gallons per minute for a full 15 minutes for this to be an ANSI compliant unit. And the one that I have seen in the industry would provide, I believe I did the calculation, would provide 1 minute for a full 25 gallons per minute, which clearly is not compliant. All right, so a couple more questions until we hit our time frame. Someone wants to know who makes the decision of how many shower stations are required near a potential problem area.
Okay. Once again, it's really important. The first thing you do is to assess your facility, to really do a risk assessment of who's working there, what is the SDS requirement for the hazard that you're working with, and how many. So it's important to know what you're working with, who's going to be working with it, how many people are working with it. Once you have those things established, then it becomes fairly simple to determine the proper type of equipment. We can help you with that, certainly. You can give me a call. You can see my number up on the screen there. I can certainly help you with that. But your most important asset is your SDS sheet. That's going to be your guide, that's your Bible for telling you what to do. ANSI doesn't say how many are required. Once again, that's really up to the facility and the risk management team there to assess each facility's own unique needs.
All right, Dennis, I think that's about it. We have a lot of questions that are really specific to your facility, and we will absolutely make sure we reach out to you via email after this to get those questions answered. I am going to send out a follow-up email with a link to the recording of today's webinar. We're also going to send you some supplementary literature, including the ANSI checklist that we've mentioned multiple times. And then I'll also be sending out another follow-up email later next week with answers to all of the Q&A that came through today. So I hope you guys learned a lot from everything today. Thank you for joining.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining. We really appreciate your attendance today.
All right, thanks and have a great day, everyone.